Level Up is a regular podcast that brings you topics to help you perform at work and in life at your very highest level. Your host is Dan Chiodo, an executive coach, corporate trainer, and author. He is president of Impact Training and Executive Coaching. And now, here's Dan.
Thanks, Jesse. And to our audience, thank you for joining us for Level Up. We want to give you things to know that help you grow. This is episode number 69. This podcast year is a season of being. Today's episode is called Be Polite. So first, a little background. You may have heard me talk about your emotional signature before. It's the impression you leave that makes a person want to interact with you again or not. You may know it as your personal brand. Think about it. What if you could perfect your emotional signature or personal brand? Maybe it's your goal for this new year. Well, we have someone today who specializes in that area. She is on a mission to make life easier, smoother, and more pleasant for everyone. She founded the Polite Company with one goal in mind: to help people present the best version of themselves to the world. She is a graduate of the Emily Post Institute, the gold standard of etiquette training for a century. My guest is Kristi Spencer, founder of the Polite Company. We welcome you to Level Up, Kristi.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to talk a little bit about this whole subject of being polite and your company. But let's start with some previous careers you've been in. Our viewers always like to learn a little bit about that. Could you tell us about that?
Well, it's a pretty short story. I was in television news for 25 years. I went to the University of Kansas and I got a broadcast journalism degree and started in Topeka, Kansas at a TV station there. And then I moved to a television station in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I was there for 23 years as the news director.
Okay.
So we saw a lot of things come and go in the area.
That is great. What a great profession, though, to prepare you. I was in the communications business, too. And some of what I saw there, I always said, boy, that really prepared me for this career as an executive coach. So now tell us how you got into this business.
Well, I had always had on my bucket list that I wanted to take a course from the Emily Post Institute. And so I decided during COVID that I would do just that. And at the time, I thought I didn't really give a lot of thought to doing it to teach other people. I just wanted to have it for myself. And then once I started doing it and I found out, that's a possibility and that's what the Post did, I decided that really had to be what I did, for my second chapter of my career. And once I started doing it, I couldn't stop.
That is great. Thinking back to the other profession you had, and I think back to my days in that profession, did you sometimes see things maybe internally or externally that weren't so polite?
Yes. And, and we as media sometimes glorified that as well. And so, if it bleeds, it leads, we're all familiar with, those kinds of stories. And as a society, I don't think that we're maybe as interested as those kind moments and being polite and having a civil society. But we all want that, in our lives, but we don't necessarily see that represented as much as, maybe we should. So I think it was a great preparation, and I'm a curious person, and I was, always learning, always interested in people and telling their stories. And so this really was kind of a natural extension of continuing to learn and, really study people and hopefully in this role, help them as well as they do try to navigate, through society.
That's great. I like that word too, navigate. That's very true. So this episode with you as our guest couldn't be more timely. Do you think that Americans are ruder today than we were 20 to 30 years ago?
I think, when they do polls on this, the majority of people say, yes, we are. But the truth is, every time they do this, every decade, people always think the same thing. And so I don't think we're necessarily becoming more uncivil, but we are becoming less formal. And, sometimes people, see that and, I just wish people held the door for people or people dressed up when they went out. But I think that's actually an opportunity, because when you do dress a little bit better than you have to, and you do send the thank you note in a less formal society, it is easier to stand out than it was before.
You are right. Just this morning, when I went to Starbucks, my wife and I go there every morning. There are lots of people coming through the doors. Some of them say hello. Most of them say hello. Some don't. Some hold the doors. Some don't. And I know today I was really excited because I would say they were probably Gen Z, but two gentlemen came in and we were trying to hold the door for them. And they said, "Oh, let me get this." And as we came through, they also turned around and the one said, "Make sure you have a great day." And I thought, sometimes we think that the younger generation isn't polite. And I think that's false. I think that many of them are.
They are. And they're also the most receptive, I have found, to learning etiquette, because, I teach them that it's not about your last name. It's not about how much money you have. It's not about your education. It is really just how you decide to impact other people. And when they find out it's not she, frou, pinkies up, that kind of thing, yes, it's kind of explained to them. And I think some ways etiquette has a little bit of a PR problem because, maybe we see it as a little old fashioned, but I think it's just absolutely necessary for a good and successful life.
I like that. And I agree with you. I think a person who is polite, who learns that etiquette, who integrates it into what they do, they just seem successful. You feel like they are going to be successful. Tell me, how does incivility impact organizations?
There's so many ways, but it's a huge ding in somebody's reputation if your workplace is known for tolerating or perpetuating incivility, and it leads to a retention problem. 12% of the people who were polled several years ago said that that's why they left their job, was because of the way that they were treated and with bad etiquette or incivility. So especially today, when companies are trying to retain employees and trying to gain employees, having that culture of respect is really a have to. I mean, it should not be a benefit of working someplace. That should just be at the core of a business.
Very true. Very true. So how do we combat workplace incivility?
I think, education is the biggest thing. You can also have a buddy. And so you need somebody at work who will tell you like it is. So, and check in with them and say, will you tell me if I ever have spinach in my teeth or if I'm being too loud on my phone? Somebody that you can really trust to, give it to you straight. And I think you say, I was listening to this podcast the other day and they were talking about incivility, and maybe that's something that we as an organization should look into a little bit. I think just bringing it to the forefront and really persuading people to get educated about it and to just be aware of it, I think is the first step.
What is the biggest etiquette mistake that you think people make at work?
The biggest one, actually, it is has to do with our cell phones. So talking too loudly on a cell phone or just talking too loudly in general in the workplace is usually the number one complaint at work.
And so what are some other things we should be watching for besides cell phones?
The other two big ones are gossip, which is a fireable etiquette offense, and bad language. I think that we have accepted, that less formal way of speaking, and our foul language is part of some of the cultures of our workplaces. And a lot of people do it, but 80% of people say that they don't want it in their workplace. So I think, that's a strong majority of people who say there's just no place for that kind of language in the workplace. That doesn't mean those 80% of the people are never, participating in that. But I think that that's a great place to start because, words are loud. And if you're making somebody uncomfortable with the way that you're talking, I just think that that's a great place for organizations to start.
Yes, I think that's a good thing to examine too, because maybe it's because I'm an English major, but I've always felt like if you're going to use 4-letter words, if you can't replace them with something else, you really haven't mastered the language very well if you have to go there.
Right.
And in fact, there was one podcast that I never did the interview because I realized this person used 4-letter words frequently throughout discussion and asked me, now, can I say whatever I want on the podcast? It really made me think about it because I thought, okay, he'd be pretty cool to have on. It might make a good podcast. How many podcast viewers will I alienate? And maybe that's what to think about at work too. How many people am I going to alienate if I just start talking this way? And what risks do I run?
Yeah, I think knowing your audience is really key.
Yes. If you think about it, this area of etiquette, that's so important, but it's something that's not covered in high school or college, is it?
Not typically. And, a lot of this does start with parents and teaching their children. But, people are busy. And sometimes we just think by, telling our kids, hey, this is what you should do, X, Y, Z, that they'll know it. But as parents, we really have to model it. And for some parents, they're stretched thin. And so if they're not learning it at home and they're not learning it at school, then they're at a really big disadvantage when they're going on to college or they're entering the workforce.
Yes. And it's great to have your organization on board here because we lived in a few southern states before and one had cotillion, but it wasn't something we saw everywhere. And we put our children through it so that they would have a program where they would learn etiquette. Your program can fill that niche for people who can't find something like cotillion. So,
yeah, learning those life skills at that age is so important. And I know cotillion has the ballroom dancing aspect to it as well, which, that's a little bit harder for maybe kids to want to go to. Mm-hmm. But I think once kids do go and they see what it's about, then they're interested because it really can make their life more easy when you know just a couple of simple rules.
Yes, that's a really good point. I know that my wife and I do ballroom dancing, and we will notice once in a while some young people, if they're engaged, about to be married, there's going to be a wedding, they come to learn ballroom dancing. This is their first exposure. And many of them then go on to do it after that too. So it's a perfect
But there's so many skills you learn in that exercise besides how to dance. Yeah, I mean there's so much you learn from that experience of asking someone, of trying to kind of get in sync with someone. And I think that again we're talking about emotional intelligence, and I think that it goes beyond knowing how to do the dance. Yeah. It really I think that it definitely has a place, and I encourage people, if they have a cotillion in their region, to definitely take advantage of it.
Yes, that's a good point you make. I was just thinking in ballroom dancing, part of what I had to learn because it was natural is the position that you're in, that your back is straight, that your hands are up. So now I get that when I go to dance, I'm in that position, but it takes a while to learn. Some of the things you offer may take a while to learn, but they're so beneficial. So this is a perfect time for a break. So there are lots of questions I want to ask you after this. I am Dan Chiodo, your host. My guest today is Kristi Spencer. Now you are watching Level Up, and we'll be right back after this.
At Express Employment Professionals
in Gulfport, Mississippi,
in Springfield, Illinois,
in Bend, Oregon,
in Champaign, Illinois,
in Corpus Christi, Texas,
in Jersey City,
in Fishers, Indiana,
here in Knoxville, Tennessee.
We're on a mission.
We're on a mission. We're on a mission.
We're on a mission.
A mission. A mission.
A mission.
a mission.
Mission.
We're on a mission to put 1 million people to work.
We are back. Thank you for being with us. We are talking to Kristi Spencer. She is my guest today, and she is the founder of the Polite Company. Kristi, what should we do if we think we've made an etiquette mistake?
And we will. It's inevitable that at some point we're going to make a mistake. But my best advice is that you admit it, you apologize, and you move on quickly. So we don't want to dwell on the mistake because then that takes the attention off of whatever was supposed to be happening and whatever the purpose, of a meeting or getting together was. And so, just admit, apologize, and move on as quickly as possible.
Yes. Like being late to a meeting. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, we're all in that position. And I think that it is, if you can become that person that's always 5 or 10 minutes early, it will save you so much, stress in your life. But inevitably, life is going to happen and we're going to be late. So I think if you come to a meeting late, you sit down, you join the meeting, you don't offer any excuse for your lateness. If you need to apologize for being late and thank the people for waiting on you or giving you a moment, but you just get into the swing of it as quickly as possible.
You bet. And I'm going to offer a little advice. Having written the book, Perfect Timing, I address being late for meetings. And if a person has that trouble, if they would just focus on when they have to leave instead of when they have to be there, they would always be early. And there are some people who it's very difficult to get over that habit. So they're going to make this etiquette mistake again and again, unless they look at it in a little different paradigm about focusing on when they have to leave. So, maybe we should say too, for anyone holding a meeting, don't you think the proper thing to do is to start on time to reward people who are there and not hold until someone gets there? What do you think?
I think, yes. We want to respect everyone's time. And you also want to set that expectation that this is when it starts. And I think that, you can always push it back 5 minutes and 10 minutes. And then no one wants to come to your meetings. They might not have wanted to be there in the first place. So I think respecting somebody's time is key.
Right. I agree. Let's talk about some self-esteem building. Kristi, do you have thoughts on that?
I think, again, when we learn just a couple of easy rules. So we know when we sit down and we look down at our place setting, we know that we have a salad fork and an entree fork. This is, this is kind of our roadmap for the meal. Knowing that allows you to focus on what you're doing. So knowing the rules helps you focus on the person or the event that's happening around you. So I really encourage people to to learn those rules so then you can focus on the relationships. And what I try to do more than anything is give people the confidence to walk into a room, to go to that meal, to attend that meeting or that networking event. And it's really just absolutely key that people have enough assurance of their own actions that they're not going to be focused on their own actions. They can focus on the people around them.
I like that. I like that. I'm always encouraging people too, when they go somewhere, to not go to people they know. They won't learn anything new. Go to people you don't know. Well, with your training, that gives them that self-esteem, that empowerment to venture out and do that, don't you think?
Yes. So you learn how to introduce yourself. You learn how to introduce others. You know, that's a really basic thing. But how many times have we been in a situation where we're not sure of who we might be talking to? We've forgotten the name of someone, or we've not been introduced to somebody. I mean, we've all been in that situation. So, you know, just knowing and practicing and being able just to pull that out of your back pocket whenever you need to do that will really help people when they are faced in those situations.
That's true. Let's talk a little bit about empathy. How do you teach empathy for other people?
Well, there's 3 principles of etiquette. It's consideration, respect, and honesty. So really that consideration point is so important. And so I think we have to keep in mind that empathy doesn't mean I agree with you. It means that I can see your point of view. So we talk about the golden rule that we've all known, but there's also the platinum rule, which is to do unto others as they want done to them. And so we don't necessarily think about how we want to be treated. We focus on how other people want to be treated. And empathy is so important and such a skill that can help people succeed building those relationships.
That's good. I love that platinum rule. That's wonderful. Now, you offer your courses in person and online. Is that true?
Yes, I do. And it's for groups, businesses, organizations, or just coaching for individuals as well.
Excellent. I like that. Do you have any other messages for, I talked about young folks at the beginning of this podcast. Any special message that you have for them if they're trying to be peak performers?
I think that you really have to look outside of yourself. Because when we're focused on ourselves, we have a loss of awareness of the people around us. And we always really, yes, we want to think about ourselves, and having respect for ourselves is so important. So being polite doesn't mean that you're a doormat, but it means that you are just taking the time to connect with other people, to have a conversation with them, to listen to them. And so a little less focus on ourselves and more focus on others, I think we could make really great strides as a society.
That's well said. Well said. I want to take us back to our communication fields. And as I've been thinking about this, I've had a chance to meet a lot of communicators, television broadcasters, that sort of thing. And I think back to the ones that I respect the most. So we always get a good image of someone if they're on camera because they're putting their best foot forward. But the ones that I remember the most and enjoy the most are the ones who were nice to me, who were polite. And those are the ones that you really admire and think the most of. So all you're saying today, it just makes a whole lot of sense to want to be one of those people that is genuinely polite. You learn things, but then you live things by doing it.
And it really makes your life so much easier. And I 100% believe people get up in the morning and they have the best intentions. But then sometimes stress happens or life happens or we're late. and then, we're kind of off the rails. So I choose to believe the good in other people, not for them so much, but for me. So that is a choice that I make. And if I can help others realize, their dream of being that person who deserves that respect and, just to foster that in other people, I think that is just the best gift I could give and the best gift I could get.
You bet. Well, that's a great place to stop, I think. Kristi, thank you so much for being on our show today and for sharing thoughts about such an important topic.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Appreciate you being here. And we thank you, our viewers. Check out the show notes from this podcast. They'll be there for you. This episode will also be in our Level Up library very soon, so take another look. Hey, Dustin, I know you'll have a few final words, but my final word is cheers.
If you feel like this information was valuable to you, Dan would love it if you'd click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or thoughts about today's episode, please leave a comment. Also, if you're a first-time subscriber, be sure to ring that bell to be notified about future episodes. To learn more about what Impact's training and development can do for you and your business, visit impactbydan.com, where you can find more information about executive coaching, corporate training, keynote speaking, and much more. Thanks so much for watching.